Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon, the show that is dedicated to showcasing B-movies, unusual releases, things we just enjoy, and a place to talk about movies and pop culture in a little less formulaic format than, say, on the Twig kind of regular show or the Twig topic shows of old, for those of you who have been around with us for the last 14 damn years. So, I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as I trek into the English countryside armed with weapons that fire blanks. I'm joined by my good friend and all-around sci-fi connoisseur.
Oh, I'm Aaron Pollyea.
And his co-host, wife, and person we always have to play with in post-production, but we love doing it anyway.
Hi, I'm Darlene.
So yeah, she is the co-host of Earth vs. Soup, the other podcast that takes place here on ThisWeekInGeek.net, where they talk about kind of older sci-fi movies, basically pre-1970. And you see some interesting stuff in there, and some stuff you may be able to find via your local kind of video store, streaming service, Criterion, Tubi, wherever you can find these things. It is not impossible. So, in this edition of Loose Cannon, I think last time we talked about the Transfers franchise. So I asked Aaron, what do you want to talk about? And he pitched a movie to me that I've heard about for the better part of 20 years. I've seen multiple advertisements for this. I've seen little clips here and there. And I thought I knew the basic premise up until about probably an hour ago when I just finished getting through this particular movie. And I'm talking about I think this movie came out in 2002, movie Dog Soldiers. I also found out the guy who directed this also did The Descent and a bunch of other really cool movies. He does stuff for Westworld. He's done a lot of cool stuff.
This movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
I saw it when it first came out, and I can't say actually it wasn't in the theater. We rented it because it looked really cheesy, and then we were really pleasantly surprised when we got an actual good, scary movie with good action and good characters.
And good costume.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I can't say... I constantly laugh about werewolf
makeup and old movies.
And stuff.
Yeah. And this totally blows it out of the water with practical effects.
Yeah, when I was watching this, there's only one or two computer-generated shots, one where somebody gets shot in the head.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's almost entirely practical. Some really impressive stuff here. Now, I'd seen this movie for the first time today, as I mentioned, and I was watching it with my friend Liam, who's going to work with us on Stargate SG-1's actual play podcast, hopefully later on in the fall. And he's former military. Mm-hmm. And he was watching this with me, and we're talking about the various pieces of kit from the movie, how he explained this, the movie starts out with them running exercises in the woods to kind of practice to get better as a unit, standard kind of military shit.
It's supposed to be up in the Scottish, not the Scottish mountains, but kind of the hills of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
But it was filmed in Luxembourg. The exterior stuff was Luxembourg, which is really interesting because I think it did actually look a lot like Scotland.
Let's say, yeah, that's what we were talking about off air. And while this was going on, as you people know from the various podcasts, I have a fascination with guns. And when they land and the guys come out with their assault rifles, there's some weird yellow thing on the barrel. And I asked my friend Liam, dude, What is that? And he's like, oh, that's... Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't know that existed. And then he tells me later on in the movie, the guy who fires, I think it's the G36, he has to manually cycle the action sometimes because the blanks weren't providing enough gas.
Yeah, yeah. And oddly enough, I went to my local PX yesterday to look for reenacting supplies that I can use for World War II, and they had a whole box of M16 blank adapters for whatever reason. It's weird. So yeah, it just kind of weird coincidence with this film because they also had the bright yellow blank adapters.
And I found out why they did this because I had a feeling like it's weird. My understanding of the military comes mostly from my friend Liam, a few family members here and there, but mostly from movies and pop culture. Some actual research, so I'm not a complete, kind of dum-dum. But I always assumed that it would be like Die Hard or it would be like Child's Play 3. And you're wondering, what the fuck's he talking about? In those movies, when they fire their weapons, there's red magazines, which are live mags, blue magazines, which are blanks, and you do it that way. I never thought, well, you're going to put something on the barrel so it can't. But the reason why they do this in the field to simulate the actual weight of the kit, so you know approximately how much it's going to weigh when you're actually carrying ammo. And when you engage in actual firefights, the gun still goes off. You're still counting rounds. You're still discarding mags. Yes. And my friend Liam told me a story how he was out during exercises when he was in boot camp. And he was telling me stories about how people would come out on watch, how people would wear different uniforms, but not always. So they could kind of screw with you to disrupt the exercise, saying, "Oh, that's an insurgent" or whatever. And I just found that fascinating. So he said this movie has a lot of meaning to him because it's so true to military, what would actually happen up until werewolves show up.
Well, even when the werewolves show up, I think they actually respond fairly realistically.
Yeah, like they talk about conserving ammo. Do they have enough? We can't see them. They're
counting
planning
rounds.
Tactics. Yeah, like there's one point, and I'm glad Darlene brought this up. They say, okay, we're down the 6 shells for the shotgun, 2 mags for the MP5, and maybe a couple mags for the handguns. Either way, they're running out. And they're firing wildly beforehand, but they're making sure they're hitting their targets or doing their best to put down suppressing fire. And I described this movie to Liam back to him. I'm like, so this is like Assault on Precinct 13 meets Night of the Living Dead, but with werewolves. And I'm thinking, that's really interesting because I wondered why no one else had done a werewolf in a house movie, so to speak. And I just had never thought about using werewolves as that force that would just keep coming after, like werewolf movies like The Howling, An American Werewolf in London. It's different. They're more wide open. There's more places where stuff happens. This movie happens in a bottle. It happens out in the forest for a little bit, then 95% in a house. And
remember that like some of the kills that happen aren't because of the werewolves. It's just random chance or accidents.
Yeah, like the guy who runs into the branch.
Yeah, exactly. He just impales himself on a branch because he wasn't looking where he was running. And that makes it feel, I don't know, more real. Like it's not, everyone isn't just automatically going to be killed by the werewolf. It's just people making dumb mistakes that anyone could make.
I like the fact that when you go into the exercise at the beginning, the guys have this, it's camaraderie, but it's picking and you have that in the military. Just like you have any close-knit group of people, you make comments, little one-liners or something. And
you described that it's all the like lowest ranking guys that are picking with each other, but they're never crapping on Sean Pertwee's character, the sergeant.
No.
Never, ever, ever. Because he's the sergeant. He's in charge. And Sean Pertwee in this movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
He's
the son of John Pertwee, the 3rd Doctor from Doctor Who.
Yeah, I was like, I know that face. I know that voice. And I heard him talk. I'm like, I know you. And then it clicked like, yeah, that's the doctor's son. But I'm also like, you're Alfred. You're the Batman's Alfred. And I just got really excited kind of watching it. And I was really worried they were going to kill him when his guts spilled out. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
I was like,
wasn't that
oh
an
my
amazing
God.
effect? And then
That
the border
was.
collie starts tearing at his wound.
Oh, now I've got a really gross side story related to guts falling out. Want to
Okay.
be grossed out? Okay. So my adoptive grandmother, her father was a World War I soldier. And in the 1970s, he had some kind of an accident, and he called my mom, my grandmother, over to help him. And she's like, Dad, what's wrong? And he's yelling, come upstairs. And he's holding his guts in the sink
Oh man.
because World War I staples had fallen out.
Oh no.
And
it
I was
just
like,
tore. Everything tore.
Yeah, so unfortunately he didn't live because they left him on a hospital stretcher for 7 hours.
What, with his guts hanging out? Jeez.
Small town medicine. Yeah. So I've always had this weird mental image of what that would actually look like, and the only two movies I've ever seen guts spilled like that is Day of the Dead 1985 and this. This was a lot more realistic, I guess, whereas
Yeah.
Day of the Dead was more gross, but this was like, oh my God. And they're holding
Day of the
his
Dead
guts
was a
in.
little more cartoony and over the top. This
Yeah.
was realistic, and they didn't want it, the camera didn't want to look at it, just like you wouldn't want to look at it.
Yeah, and they're holding him together, they're treating him. And I asked Liam at one point, Mike, well, you've had battlefield medical training. What is happening? And they're pouring salt on the wound to disinfect it or as a clotting agent.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, I never would have thought about that.
Yep.
And
And then
that's
super glue.
Yeah, I'm like, that is such an attention to detail. And it's such a minor thing, too, that only weird people like us are probably going to notice or even care about.
Well, the other interesting part of that scene with Sean Pertwee's guts hanging out is that in the scene where they bring him up to the bedroom and they're actually like gluing him back together, he actually got drunk in real life for that scene.
Yes.
And the director said he didn't actually know how much he had drunk, but it was the best drunk acting. You know how Cooper has to punch him twice in that scene to knock him out. And it's because the first punch was actually a stage punch. And that's where Sean Pertwee starts cursing him out, calling him a pansy. And then the second punch was actually real. Like it connected with Sean Pertwee, and then he just acted like he was laid out because Sean Pertwee is hardcore and was drunk, and it would take a lot more than a single punch to knock him out.
Oh my God. Yeah, like that I thought was actually pretty funny. So we've been yipping for about 12 minutes here, folks, about this movie and some of the cool things we like. But Aaron, why don't you and Darlene succinctly explain the movie's plot overall?
Okay, well, I can start with it. Yeah, it basically is a British, UK Army unit, or at least, yeah, let's just say
a regular
Army.
army versus a special forces.
Well, the special forces is there, but the reason why the special forces is there is because we learn later on that they're actually out hunting a werewolf singular, and they're using this army unit as bait. But the army unit doesn't know.
They only know they're going to go up against a special forces unit.
Yes. So it becomes really strange when this when this regular army unit runs across the special forces camp and finds the evidence of everyone being killed, ripped apart, no bullets ever being fired.
Before that, they actually tell a story of the beast of Bodmin Moor.
Yeah, Bodmin Moor, and it's actually the dry open shows a couple campers
Yes.
being slaughtered, and it's actually a pretty intense scene that I felt worked really well because it showed terror. Like the guy wasn't even screaming really, and the woman was just struggling, confused what was happening. But they all know about this story of these campers just completely disappearing, and that there's been people disappearing up here for years.
It's kind of like a mythology that they're going over.
So they find this slaughtered camp. There's blood everywhere. There's evidence that no one was able to fire around, and they find a guy named Ryan. Ryan is the head of the special forces
the special force campground.
I already said that. And Cooper has a previous experience with this guy because he's a real dickhead. Ryan is a real dickhead. He likes forcing his special forces guys to kill a dog. This is kind of an SS thing from World War II that in order to be in the SS, you had to raise a puppy and then kill it once your training was done to prove that you did not care. You had enough strength of will or whatever to kill an innocent animal that had learned to love you and rely on you. Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
Jesus.
So it's one of those things. If you know history, Ryan is supposed to come off as a fascist prick, and he's the one that always has the black uniform on in this. So there's a lot of subtle, I wouldn't say subtle, but there's a lot of cues to show that this guy is a bad dude. They start running from the beast after they find this camp. They encounter a woman who is a biologist out in the woods with a Land Rover. They get into the car and get to this house that has been abandoned. The food is still on the stove. The table is laid out for dinner, but nobody is there, and there's a border collie there. Which is a working dog. They're actually a breed that herds sheep and is very intelligent.
Matter of fact, they'll herd kids if you really need them.
Yeah, they do. So basically, it becomes, like you said, Night of the Living Dead with werewolves. That werewolves are attacking the house because they're inside of it.
And the woman knows about the
family.
The werewolves.
Well, yeah.
And that's why she says that when she started hearing the shooting, that's where she started to get into her vehicle and run to see if she can rescue.
But it turns out that this woman is also a part of this werewolf pack. It's just that she's been holding back changing for this entire time. And she's kind of herded these army guys into this house to be slaughtered because the family that lives here is the werewolf pack. And
besides the ones that are the soldiers.
And here's something that I don't think was ever actually put forth in the show, in the movie very clearly. That stew that they were eating is human stew.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, the one that he pukes up.
Yeah, that he pukes up because it doesn't taste right. It's human stew. One by one, the characters are being picked off, but two characters who have been wounded by the werewolves, Sean Pertwee's character Wells, who had his guts hanging out, and then Ryan, the special forces guy, are getting stronger through the movie. They aren't laid out like they were, and it's clear that they are healing, unnaturally healing. The end game basically is the werewolves getting inside the house and Cooper fighting his way out with Sean Pertwee as Wells, basically at his side all the way to the end until Sean Pertwee's character begins to
shoves them down into the
basement, and they blow up the house with a gas main explosion.
But he is it Cooper that kills the girl as she starts to change? Because she likes.
No, I think that's one of the other. I think that's Spoon that does it.
Spoon, I thought, was dead by then.
No. Spoon lasted until they got all the way upstairs, up to like that third floor.
He dies in the kitchen, right?
Yeah, he comes back down and starts fighting, but she's already changed at that point. It's either that or it's Sean Pertwee that I don't have it written down. It's either Spoon or Sean Pertwee's character Wells that blows her away as she starts changing.
Because she really didn't want to.
Yeah, she didn't want to. But yeah, that's the basic summary of the film. There's a lot, but I'm leaving out tons of like inner character stuff, subtle clues that are laced throughout the movie. Yes, I just spoiled the entire movie. But it is from 2002, folks. And it's worth watching even knowing that, because obviously I've seen this multiple times, Darlene. You've seen this multiple times.
Yes.
And we know the ending. and it's still a fantastic movie.
Watching this, it gave me vibes of Aliens and Resident Evil at one point, because there's a plot point where I think it's Ryan's character mentions the government wants these things as
Yes.
as bioweapons, and I'm thinking, wow, this is about the time the Resident Evil movies were hitting, and this is about the time the Resident Evil video games were really blowing up. So that's neat, or the Wayland Yutani kind of reference in there.
You get that hint when you go into the special forces camp, and they've got injections and
they have like knockout darts and all these like like tasers. I think they have in there too. But yeah, there's tons of tranquilizer stuff that they have. So obviously they've been hunting the werewolves.
The werewolf. They thought it was only one.
They thought it was one, because that's what Ryan is mumbling kind of crazy in the camp. There was only supposed to be one. But we need to talk about the werewolf costumes. We should.
Yeah, I found out that the movements and the actors are dancers, which give them such a unique movement. And I'm watching this, and again, I'm used to the traditional big scary werewolf, or the werewolves from Vampire the Masquerade, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And as I'm looking at these, and I'm Native Canadian, like I'm Indigenous, and I'm looking at these and thinking, these things remind me of like Wendigos. Yeah. I've never seen that kind of a design before, at least realized on screen. And I'm thinking, that's a really unique design. I really like that.
Is it because of their like narrow snouts that they have?
It's the body. Like the body's so thin.
Yeah. They look emaciated, and they're cannibals. Well, I mean, you can't say they're cannibals because they aren't technically human, but yeah, they're eating humans.
I like the lower part where it does look like a dog standing up. It's got the kind of a different pull on the leg. And I don't know how they did that, but when these people stood up inside the cottage, their head was almost hitting the top of
supposedly, from what I've read, they designed that set,
for
the house set
perspective, right?
Well, no, they designed it purposely smaller than the costumes, so the werewolves would have to hunch to get through the doors to help emphasize how big they were.
Oh wow, yeah, because like I'm watching it and I was wondering like is this forced perspective? But now that you mention that does seem more natural, just to make the sets a little bit smaller as opposed to making the set bigger and worrying about your like kind of floor plan.
Yeah, no, it actually, if you go into the behind the scenes stuff, if you look at some of the pictures, those costumes, they really are tall. They are very large werewolf costumes.
I kind of wonder how big they were compared to, say, the Aliens xenomorph costume. I wonder if they're about the same size.
And I'll have to like look for pictures, and maybe you can put pictures like linked to this when we put the podcast up if you wanted to. But I'm pretty sure that the dog soldiers costumes were like 8 feet
that's
tall.
The good one right there.
Yeah, because I can bring up images just on a simple Google search that really shows how tall these things are. And it's because the tall dancers, like the 6'6" dancers that they had in those suits, their feet only go down to the creature's knees. And then they have long lower legs as well on top of that. So they're like 8 feet tall.
See, I love it when a creature designer puts the effort to make the physiology not just a Power Rangers villain. Like, you know what I mean? Like, where they take care in crafting the makeup, the special effect, the look of the creature to make it, I don't know, it makes sense in 3D space. It's not just I'm a guy in a rubber suit and I'm going to attack you. These things, they move a certain way. There's a biology to it. Like, there's a movement to it. And I really appreciate it when directors, writers, and whoever else involved in this process works to make this happen. And they'll go out and get specialists who know how to do this. Like, I think the guy who's in the alien costume, I think his name is Tom Woodruff Jr., I think. I'm probably wrong, but I know other movies like, or even for Star Trek Discovery, the guy that plays
Doug
Saru.
Jones?
Yeah, like he played Abe Sapien from Hellboy. He's done a bunch of these really heavy makeup movies, and the movements are all different. And these dancers give these werewolves a sense of just gravity and how they would move. And I don't know, there's a deadly grace to it. I
Yes.
guess would be how I would put it.
And what makes it better to me is that they don't overuse it either. Like the first half of the movie, you barely see the werewolves. Like you see little glimpses of them, and you're thinking, oh man, like if you have a whole bunch of experience with horror movies in general, it's because you do that when the costumes look bad, that you're trying to hide the flaws in your makeup or costume. In this, they're doing it just to build up to the last part of the movie.
Build up tension. And the other thing I liked is the one they went from the guy looking in night vision, the soldier, to the black and white vision of the werewolf.
Yeah, that it's not like night vision, but it's like low light.
No, there was
it's the black and white, but it looks like it's day out. Because,
but you went in the movie, it shows the guy, the soldier looking through the night vision.
Yes.
And then the next scene, you see the black and white version, which is, at that point, you're looking through the eyes of the werewolf.
And you're much higher up off the ground.
Yes.
As this thing is sprinting through the woods.
Because he's looking at the guy that's looking through night vision.
Yeah. Sorry. What were you going to say?
No, I was about to say there's so many parts of this movie that just work. And I think another thing that it's understated, and I like it because it's understated, you don't know the true supernatural or biological origins of the werewolves. You just have to accept there's werewolves. There's a bunch of them. The government wants them. That's it. They never say they came from wherever. They never go into any supernatural detail. They just are. And I love it. I like it when certain movies explain the origins of monsters to me, because I think that's really fascinating. But here they don't need to, because they are just the threat. And it's seeing how the characters cooperate against, this unrelenting barrage that seems to happen every few hours. And then things going wrong, or friends dying, betrayals left, right, and center. There's just, I like how this movie had a really good pace to it. It didn't feel like there was anything unnecessary in it.
I agree. And I think I need to also point out that the actress who played Megan, Emma Cleesby, she has not been in a lot of roles, a lot of films, but she did an excellent job in this. She stood out as like the only woman in this movie, the only female character, and she held her own against a lot of the guys. Like just holding the scene down.
Yeah, like a lot of the actors in this have gone on to do things like Game of Thrones. There's, I think, some people have done some voice acting for Assassin's Creed, Batman, various other kind of projects. If you're British, I'm sure you recognize a lot of these people. Like, I don't know, there was just such a good chemistry amongst everyone. Like, there's not one thing about this movie I can say that I disliked. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, this movie I'd heard about for 20 years, and I don't think I ever went into why. So Canada in the early 2000s had a big cable boom via Rogers Cable Systems, which is the big provider, at least here in Ontario. I think that's the way in other provinces too. But they had a horror channel that was dedicated to showing just various horror movies, right? Like you'd get Friday the 13th marathons, Jason, like anything you can think of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, one year, I think this was the year 2002 or 2003, they showed Dog Soldiers a shit ton. I saw so many commercials for that I thought I'd seen the movie, and I always had the impression that the movie was literally about werewolves who were special forces. I didn't know it was army versus werewolves. And I thought either way, it's going to be a cool concept. But again, I was just so genuinely surprised that not many people, at least in my circle of friends, outside of like a couple, like Liam and maybe Alex, talk about these types of movies. I mean, when you think about werewolf movies, this one doesn't seem to get brought up as much as, the big two, Howling and An American Werewolf, and then to a lesser extent, you hear Ginger Snaps get mentioned a lot. But I don't hear this one talked about, and that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's much better than.
I think this is the best werewolf movie I've watched.
Yeah, see, that's why I pitched this to you. Between both of us, yeah, Darlene is firmly, this is the best werewolf movie she's ever seen, right? Like,
yes, the only other one I'd say is, because it's slacky, is Strippers versus Werewolves.
And I mean, I like the Howling, like the first Howling. I like American Werewolf in London, the original, not like the newer
Paris one. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is such a solid dramatic piece.
And it's weirdly timeless too, because you can't say this happens in 1995.
Oh, yeah,
actually,
you can.
Oh,
You
really?
can.
I missed that.
And it's only because of two things that happen in the film, and this is hardcore Sherlock Holmes type stuff.
It tells you what month and what year.
Okay, it happens on the night of September 1st to September 2nd, 2001, and it's because it's a full moon, and the specific sports scores that are shown in the credit sequence.
Are they accurate?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It turns out that was a real game that they were talking about, so the exact date that occurred on.
So that they were talking about this all the way through the movie.
So
that they were missing this game.
But to your point, I agree. If you don't know that, it is kind of timeless. It feels just like it could have happened even in 2021 here. It could have happened this year.
And it could have happened. Well, I couldn't say it happened in the 80s because those weapons are a little bit more advanced.
Yeah, but 90s, sure.
90s,
you could even buy that through the 90s. But yeah, it's so good. I don't know. I can't tout this enough.
There's little small things, like you walk past the cow.
Yeah.
And it's one of the Scottish long-haired cows. And then that cow gets thrown into the fire pit.
At them at night, you remember right at the beginning of the movie.
It's all these little things, and every time I watch it, I see something else. And I'm not somebody that likes horror, but I call this not really horror, it's more thriller.
Horror, yeah, I would call this horror adventure with thriller aspects. Like, it's almost like Werewolf Alien, because the werewolves are constantly attacking. Like, I don't know, like, you're right. There's something about this movie, Darlene, that just, it works on so many levels. And I don't know, I wish more people knew about this, and I don't know. Like, fortunately, my next door neighbor had the Blu-ray of this, and that's how we watched it. I don't know how easy it is to find this movie.
See, we don't even have it on Blu-ray. We have it on a standard DVD. And I know I bought it a long time ago, so I have no idea. I can look in. It looks like there's a version of it for sale on Amazon Prime right now that's Blu-ray.
Yeah.
How much is
Blu-ray.
It's $15.
That's
There's
not
another
bad
one
for-
that's
Well,
just
yeah, there's the collector's edition Blu-ray DVD combo pack, which is $15, and then Blu-ray by itself is $9.
Like, I honestly feel very safe recommending this movie because, again, Aaron pitched it to me. I'd known about it for years, but I had no idea. I had a great time watching this. In fact, yeah, I'm probably with Darlene. This is one of the best werewolf movies. I'm not going to say it's the best because I haven't seen Ginger Snaps yet, but I hear that's a good werewolf movie for exploring other morality issues and issues of identifying. I can't remember if people said it was a sexuality thing or something, but in terms of pure action and just being a good damn movie, this is it. This is great. And for $10, yeah. I can
Watch
think of a
it
lot
again.
worse ways to spend it.
Yeah, watch it again now
So
that you've
you
watched
can
it.
you can watch the little details, like the picture of the family's picture, the little things that you don't always get. You didn't get that the soup was
The stew was human
the
stew.
stew was human stew. You didn't see that there's all kinds of little things in there that you're constantly finding.
And one final thing I want to say about this movie too, it's unconventional in the regards that they don't always rely on their guns.
Yes.
There's one point where they're fighting with pots and pans. A knife gets broken off at the blade in one of the werewolves' backs, and it's not just shotguns and MP5s and handguns. Like, they throw hot stew or a soup in one of the werewolves' face.
Boiling water.
Yeah, boiling water.
That was set up. It was Chekhov's boiling water because they needed to have all the boiling water going constantly for Sean Pertwee's wound.
Yeah.
For his ripped out guts. It's like the silver letter opener that is given in the beginning of the movie. And I said, look, it's Chekhov's letter opener.
Oh, and that was good too, because when he stabbed it in the back, you saw it start to the skin or whatever it was start to go dead.
Yeah, it started dying. Like, silver actually hurts them, but it doesn't kill them. Like, that's what it came out to be. Like, yeah, there's the legend of the werewolf, but
there was no silver in the house.
There was no silver in the house. That's why they went through the silverware, remember? And they're like, who would have thought? No silver here.
But, like, overall, folks, this is a fantastic movie. If you want to spend the $10, I highly recommend you pick this up. It's on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. I don't know how much it is on .ca, but I really think you should check this movie out as summer begins to wind down. I know we're going to be talking about a lot more horror movies and cooler ones you might not expect in the month of October, but it's still summer right now, so still enjoy our boiling death climate right now. It's hot here anyway. So next time on the show, Aaron pitched to me another great idea, once again expanding my cinematic palette. He pitched the original Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is arguably one of the worst movies ever made, but is charming in its own way, and its companion movie that was made by Tim Burton in the 90s called Ed Wood. And I've only ever seen clips of Ed Wood, and I only know Plan 9 from Outer Space by reputation alone, and I guess at some point I should have my geek card revoked, because both are considered essential viewing of the geek experience, and I just have never sought these movies out because I have a very weird temperament against Tim Burton.
No, I get that. And you know what? It probably could be considered a crossover episode with Earth versus Soup fully, because, I mean, Plan 9 from Outer Space is totally inside our ballywick.
Yeah.
Well, we were planning on doing one.
Yeah, we were planning on doing it, so maybe we don't have to if we do like a crossover episode.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I don't know a lot of pre-1970s sci-fi. It's an area for me I am remarkably weak, and I've seen maybe 5 movies in my life, and I couldn't even tell you what half of them are. So I'm always willing to learn more, and that's part of the goal here on shows like Future Imperfect and Loose Cannon. We want to expose you to new stuff you may not have heard of, or here's something we're excited about. Why don't you check it out with us? So once again, Darlene.
Can I do a suggestion?
Yes.
Why don't you come to us about the Planet 9, and we'll come to you for the Ed Wood movie.
All right, we will definitely talk about this in the planning. So look forward for that, folks. That's probably should be coming up on the next Loose Cannon, as me and Aaron and now Darlene are taking control of the site for the month of August, while Alex, the producer, takes a long-awaited trip to Worlds of Final Fantasy and beyond. Also coming up, as of this recording, our next Future Imperfect should be talking about the Aliens franchise. That's right, folks. The Aliens movie just celebrated, I think, its 35th anniversary this year. Aliens Fireteam Elite comes out across all major consoles on the 24th. I just pre-ordered my deluxe copy, so did Liam. So we are ready to take on the xenomorph threat of Weyland Yutani. Then after that, I know for Future Imperfect, we were going to talk about manned missions to space and space probes. There's a lot of fascinating stuff going on out there. And I'm actually working on something special I haven't even told Aaron about. Want to be surprised? Want to be surprised?
Sure. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
So what I've done in my sleep-addled mindlessness, I decided to contact the Mutual UFO Network. I interviewed them.
MUFON?
Yeah, I taught the MUFON about 12 or 13 years ago, very early on in my career. And obviously, as things have changed in the media and governments across the world, things are different on the UFO front. And I would love to catch up with someone and talk about this. So I've reached out to them. We'll see what happens. There's a new series on Netflix that talks about declassified kind of UFO stuff, and I've made no secret that I'm a believer in extraterrestrials. So whether you think I'm nuts or whatever, we'll wait and see. But we'll talk to them and just kind of get the other side of the story from a different viewpoint. And of course, as always, folks, I do leave the floor open to you. Whether you believe or choose not to believe, we hope to provide you with some entertaining and perhaps thought-provoking content at any time. So once again, big thank you to Darlene. Thank you for coming out. Definitely appreciate it. Aaron, as always, it is a pleasure working with you. So guys, I guess that's going to do it for this edition of Loose Cannon. So as always, we're going to lock up the video store. You're going to eat tomorrow or today's popcorn tomorrow because we're those kind of jerks. So be kind, rewind, and we'll catch you guys again next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Have a good night.
Are either one of these any good? Sir,
What?
are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick, change the channel!
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.